Good morning, students. Today we'll be discussing the lecture bone loss and the pattern of bone loss. We'll be starting with the introduction. The bone that forms and support the tooth is called alveolar process. So the bone that forms and support the tooth, that is just around the tooth, is known as alveolar process. And the destruction of bone, if destruction of this alveolar bone is there, the tooth will be mobile and it will exfoliate after some time. And once the tooth is shed, the bone will resorb. Alveolar bone. The facial and the lingual part of the alveolar bone, they are compact bone. Moreover, the socket wall is also compact bone, and the radiographic appearance of this compact bone is known as lamina dura. So the radiographic appearance of the socket wall is known as lamina dura. Interdental septum is made up of cancellous bone. Coming on to the very important parameter, the distance of cemento-enamel junction to the alveolar process. The average distance in the young adult, it is 0.75 millimeter to 1.59 millimeter, and in adults or old ages, it is 1.08 to 2.8 millimeter. So the distance from cemento-enamel junction to the alveolar process in old ages is 1.08 to 2.8 millimeter. Coming on to the alveolar bone in disease. Destruction of bone is responsible for the tooth loss, as we have already discussed. Height and the density of alveolar bone, they are maintained by the equilibrium regulated by the local and systemic factors between bone formation and resorption. So bone formation and resorption, it is continuously going on, and if bone formation supersedes resorption, then deposition of bone will be there, and if resorption supersedes, then resorption will be there. We'll be discussing in detail how the resorption will be there. Coming on to the etiology. The main etiology of bone loss is extension of gingival inflammation, that is induced by dental plaque. Second is etiological factor is trauma from occlusion, and the last is systemic disorders. We'll be discussing in detail bone destruction caused by extension of gingival inflammation, that is the dental plaque. So dental plaque, if it's getting deposited around the tooth and the plaque is getting matured, then the bone resorption will be there. Moreover, this is the most common cause of bone loss. Most common cause of bone destruction in periodontal disease is extension of inflammation from the marginal gingiva into the supporting periodontal ligament structure. Plaque formation is there, plaque maturation is there, and then there will be gingivitis. But all the periodontitis, they are not always preceded by gingivitis. Not all case of gingivitis will transform into periodontitis. The transition from gingivitis to periodontitis is associated with change in composition of bacterial plaque. So what is happening basically? The dental plaque that is there, it contains so many bacteria, and these bacteria, they are exerting the influence on the tissues. So the plaque formation that is there, once the plaque is getting matured over the period of time, so the big difference between the plaque that is initially formed and plaque that is formed, or there is a big difference between the young plaque and the mature plaque. If we see the supragingival plaque, the bacteria in the supragingival plaque, they are carbohydrate fermenting. They will survive on the carbohydrate that they will get from the saliva. But the subgingival plaque that is there, the main composition of subgingival plaque is various spirochetes and anaerobic bacteria, and basically they survive on the breakdown product of collagens in the bone, because they are proteolytic bacteria. So once the plaque will mature from aerobic to anaerobic, then only destruction of tissues will be there. So we are repeatedly saying there is maturation of plaque. The extension of inflammation is modified by pathogenic potential of dental plaque and the resistance of the host. So there are two important factors that is responsible for the bone loss. One is the virulence factor of the bacteria and the next is resistance of the host. Let us see the plaque. It is getting accumulated, and once plaque accumulation is there and maturation is there, it is getting the number of gram-negative bacteria is increasing in the plaque. Then the various components from the dental plaque like liposaccharides, they will leach out in the gingival tissue and they will irritate the gingival tissues and inflammation will be there, and because of this pro-inflammatory cytokine they are getting increase in the number like interleukin 1, tumor necrotic factor. They will activate the osteoclast and hence breakdown of the bone will be there. Moreover, because of various irritations in lipopolysaccharide that is there from the dental plaque, various host cell, all the host cell like gingival cell, macrophages, fibroblasts, they will all secrete various cytokines, pro-inflammatory cytokines like interleukin 1, interleukin 6, tumor necrotic factor, which will again activate the osteoclasts. So hence destruction of bone and the connective tissues will be there. What is mechanism of bone destruction? So we'll be discussing in detail what is mechanism of bone destruction. In this picture we can see it's an osteoclast. Osteoclast is multinucleated, and once it get activated by various cytokines and prostaglandins, it will form a seal border and then HCl is secreted over the surface of bone and then resorption of bone will be there. Mechanism of bone destruction. The factor involved in bone destruction in periodontal disease are bacterial and host mediated. So both the bacteria and the host factor is responsible for the destruction of bone. Plaque product induce osteoclast differentiation and also stimulate gingival cell to release various mediators, various pro-inflammatory mediators. Plaque product and inflammatory mediator can inhibit action of osteoblast and reduce their number. Several host factors released by inflammatory cell are prostaglandin, interleukin 1 alpha and beta, and tumor necrotic factor. And all these factors, all these inflammatory factors, they will act on osteoclast and fibroblast, and secretions of the activation of osteoclast and fibroblast will lead to destruction of bone and so I have again made a diagrammatic representation of the same, how bone resorption takes place. The two factors that are responsible is bacterial factors and the host cells. So if you talk about the bacterial component, various bacteria, they have various virulence factors like collagenase, interleukin 1, interleukin 6, tumor necrotic factor. They will all act on, they will increase the prostaglandin E2 level, which will act on osteoclast. Multinucleated osteoclast once get activated, it leads to desorption of bone. Moreover, the host cell, the various components like lipopolysaccharide, they irritate the cell and the cells start talking to each other in the form of cytokines, and various cytokines are liberated like interleukin 1, interleukin 6, and it will act on prostaglandin E2, which will lead to activation of osteoclast and hence resorption of bone will be there. So we should know what all cytokines are involved in the resorption of bone. Moreover, there are certain pro-inflammatory cytokine and anti-inflammatory cytokine. So let us see first of all what is anti-inflammatory cytokines. The anti-inflammatory cytokines are interferons, interleukin 10, interleukin 4 and interleukin 13. When the concentration of these cytokine increase, then the osteoblast will be activated and hence bone formation will be there. But if pro-inflammatory cytokines will be activated, that is activated by various lipopolysaccharide that is there in the plaque. So all the cells that are there, gingival cells, fibroblasts, macrophages, they all start secreting various cytokines. Cytokine is also known as cell talking. This is the way how cells talk to each other, whether they are feeling good, whether they are feeling bad. So the cell, they will start secreting interleukin 6, interleukin 1 beta, tumor necrotic factor alpha, and once the concentration of these components increase, osteoclast will be activated and resorption of bone will be there. So they are acting in opposite to each other. They are causing inflammation, and the anti-inflammatory cytokine, they are suppressing the inflammation and causing deposition of bone. So I guess this is very important thing to remember, what are anti-inflammatory and pro-inflammatory cytokines. Inflammatory cytokines, they are secreted when the environment is conducive. So all the cells, they can secrete cytokine. So cytokine is kind of cell talking mechanism, how they convey their feeling, how they are feeling. So when the environment is conducive, they will secrete interleukin 10, interleukin 13, interleukin 11 and transforming growth factor beta. But if noxious stimuli are there or inflammatory components are there, the pro-inflammatory cytokines, they are secreted by all the cells, and these components, it will cause inflammation, it will increase the level of prostaglandin and matrix metalloproteinase. So it's important to remember the pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory cytokines. And all the cells, they can secrete cytokines. It is the way how cells communicate with each other. Pathway of gingival inflammation. The pathway of spread of inflammation is very critical because it affects the pattern of bone destruction. So let us see what is the pathway, the path that is taken by the inflammation in the gingiva. So there are the two diagrams, A and the B. So what is the difference between the two diagrams? Let us see. First of all, let us see the first diagram, that is onto the left hand side. In the left hand side diagram, we can see a big difference that the arrow, first of all, this diagram is of interdental area, and the arrow, it is going, the pathway of inflammation is going straight from the gingival component into the alveolar bone. That means the inflammation will go straight from the gingiva into the underlying alveolar bone. But if we look at the facial and the lingual surfaces, it is quite different. In the facial and lingual surfaces, the inflammation is not going straight into the bone. It is either going in the gingival component or in the periodontal ligament first, and then it will go into the bone. So there is a big difference between the two, and that is the reason why the bone loss is more common in the interdental area. Interdental area is more vulnerable to collect the plaque. So pathway of spread of inflammation, we have already discussed, from gingiva into the bone, from bone into the periodontal ligament, and from gingiva into the periodontal ligament. Facial and lingually, from gingiva along the outer periosteum, from periosteum into the bone, and from gingiva into periodontal ligament. Coming on to the histopathology. Gingival inflammation extends along the collagen fiber bundle. Follow the course of blood vessel through the loosely arranged tissues around them into the alveolar bone. Let us see the diagrammatic representation, what exactly is the meaning of this. So if we look at the diagram, first of all we can see the gingival inflammation that was initiated. It will extend along the collagen fiber bundle and it will follow the course of blood vessels, and these blood vessels we can see that is going into the marrow space. The inflammation, it will follow the blood vessel and then it will go into the marrow space like this. So the gingival inflammation, it is following the collagen fiber bundle as well as the blood vessels. After inflammation reaches the bone, by extension from gingiva, it spread into the marrow space and replaces the marrow with leukocytes and fluid exudate and new blood vessels and proliferating fibroblasts. So once the inflammation, it has reached the marrow, all the leukocytic components and fluid exudate, proliferating blood vessels, fibroblasts, it will be getting, the marrow is getting filled with all these components, and multinucleated osteoclasts and mononuclear phagocytic increase in the number. The bone surface appear lined with horse-shaped lacunae. The horse-shaped lacunae is basically when the osteoclast is activated, where they sit, it is known as horse-shaped lacunae. The resorption of bone is taking place basically. So we can see the inflammatory component, that the inflammatory component, it has followed the course of collagen and the blood vessels, and now we can see the marrow space, it is getting infiltrated with leukocytes and fluid exudate, new blood vessels proliferation will be there. Moreover, we can see multinucleated osteoclast is getting activated and resorption of bone will be there. So we can see inflammatory infiltrate into the bone marrow as well as in the connective tissues. In marrow space, the resorption process causing a thinning of surrounding bone trabeculae and enlargement of marrow space. And destruction of bone and reduction in the height of the bone will be there. So just because the osteoclast was very active because of the inflammatory component, the increase in the level of prostaglandin, I am repeating again and again, the level of prostaglandin is getting increased, the osteoclast is getting activated, and the resorption of bone is there. Now we can see the resorption, the bone is reduced in the height, and moreover we can see from inside also the thinning of bone is there. So this is how the disease will progress and the resorption of bone will be there. Let's have a quick look into the flow chart. The gingival inflammation into the marrow space. The marrow space is replaced by leukocytes and fluid exudate, new blood vessels and proliferating fibroblasts, increase in osteoclast and mononuclear cell, thinning of bone trabeculae and enlargement of marrow space, destruction of bone and reduction of the bone height. Replacement of fatty marrow with the fibrous tissue. The fatty marrow that was there initially, it is getting replaced with a fibrous type. Coming on to the radius of action of plaque, it's yet another topic that is very important. Radius of action of plaque. It is 1.5 to 2.5 millimeter, within which bacterial plaque can induce the bone loss. Let us have a diagrammatic representation of what exactly is the radius of action of plaque. What exactly is radius of action of plaque is basically whenever the plaque accumulation is there, we can have a look. The plaque accumulation is there, the action exerted by the plaque, it is confined within this radius. That means if we draw a radius, the action of plaque, all the inflammatory component, bone resorption, all the effect of inflammation, it will be confined within this diameter. Beyond this, there won't be any effect. So coming on to, this is very important parameter to remember, it is 1.5 to 2.5 millimeter. That means the plaque accumulation is there, will draw a radius, keeping the center where exactly deposition of plaque is there, and then it will draw a radius, then the circle that we will get, the action of plaque, it will be confined within this circle. So this exactly will be the picture that will be we can see after the deposition of plaque is there. So bone resorption, it will be confined within the circle. Beyond this there won't be any effect, and moreover in the circle there will be inflammatory component, all the leukocyte and all the inflammation that is going on, it is within the circle. So this radius of action of bone is very important thing to remember. In aggressive periodontitis, bone loss is greater than 2.5 millimeter. Why is it so? If we are saying the radius of action of bone is there, but why the bone loss in aggressive periodontitis is sometime greater than 2.5 millimeter? What is the answer? The answer is larger defect greatly exceeding a distance of 2.5 millimeter from tooth surface is caused by presence of bacteria in the tissues. So it is the presence of bacteria in the tissues. Because of that, so much of inflammation is there. Now coming on to the rate of bone loss. Bone loss. In a study of Sri Lankan tea labourers with no oral hygiene and no dental care, Lowe and co-worker found that the rate of bone loss was average about 0.2 millimeter in a year and 0.3 millimeter on the proximal surface in a year. And he concluded that on the basis of the disease progressing, he concluded that there are rapid progression can be seen in 8% of the individuals. Very severe or rapid progression of the disease was noted, and the attachment loss yearly was 0.1 to 1 millimeter, and approximately 81% of the individual had moderate progression of the periodontal disease with yearly loss of attachment 0.05 to 0.5 millimeter. The remaining 11% of the persons had minimum or no progression of periodontal disease of about 0.5 to 0.9 millimeter yearly. Bone destruction caused by trauma from occlusion. Trauma from occlusion can produce bone destruction in the absence or presence of inflammation. Bone destruction caused by trauma from occlusion. Trauma from occlusion can produce bone destruction in the absence or presence of inflammation. In the absence of inflammation, the changes are caused by increased compression and tension of periodontal ligament and increased osteoclasia of alveolar bone to necrosis of periodontal ligament and bone, which lead to resorption of bone. These changes are reversible, which may cause angular shape of bone loss. In the absence of inflammation, the changes cause a more bizarre pattern of bone resorption. Let us see a diagrammatic representation. What exactly is the meaning of this? Bone destruction that can be seen in trauma from occlusion can be explained in a way that normally when someone occlude in a centric relation, basically it's an occlusal table and the forces should be equally distributed on the surface of tooth. But if this occlusal pattern is get disturbed either due to high point or due to some defective restoration, and the forces, they are not centered in the same way, they are not dissipating uniformly, they are focused on a one point, then this lead to trauma to the periodontal structure. This is known as trauma from occlusion. So if the relations are normal, the uniform distribution of forces will be there, but if this is getting disturbed and because of high point or some defective restoration and a point contact is there, the area of contact it is getting replaced by the point contact. See, a point, only point contact is there. This area is disoccluded. So the force will be transmitted from this point, and this excessive force that is delivered to the opposite tooth, it will cause the disturbance in the periodontal ligament structure, which lead to resorption of bone. So what exactly is the mechanism? So what are the chemical involved? How this bone resorption take place? See, I have already told you, whenever cell they are in there is a noxious stimuli or some inflammatory component is there, or some chemical they act on the cell will start secreting various inflammatory component whenever surrounding is not conducive. So they start secreting inflammatory components. Similarly, in trauma from occlusion, whenever excessive forces are there, the cells, all the cells, gingival cells, fibroblasts, all the cells, they start secreting various cytokine, that is cell talking components. They are interleukins, interleukin 1, tumor necrotic factor, interferons. So all these cells, it will increase the number of concentration of prostaglandin, which will act on which will lead to activation of osteoclast, and hence resorption of bone will be there. So the traumatic force, it will act on all the cells, and the cyclooxygenase cycle will be there, and production of prostaglandin E2 will be there, and not only from the cyclooxygenase pathway, various cytokines or cell talking components are released, and they will act on the osteoclast, and hence resorption of bone will be there. So this is very important to remember how exactly this process take place. And moreover, the platylate that is getting compressed or aggregated due to compression forces, they will also secrete prostaglandin, the same mechanism, and it will act on the osteoclast, and hence resorption of bone will be there. So this is a diagram of a bodily movement of a tooth. When bodily movement of tooth will be there, so on the side of compression, various cytokines is increased. These are interleukin 1, beta, tumor necrotic factor, interleukin 6. All this, it will increase the osteoclastic activity, and hence resorption of bone will be there, so that tooth can move onto this side. But if you look at the opposite side, on the tension side, where stretching is there, periodontal ligament fibers are getting stretched, increase in the level of interleukin 10, increase OPG, all these fibers will cause osteoblastic activity, so deposition of bone will be seen onto the opposite side. So again, there are various anti-inflammatory cytokine and pro-inflammatory cytokine. Because of because of all these components, bone resorption or deposition will be there. So coming on to the diagrammatic representation, a tooth is there, increase forces on a tooth, the teeth will try to move from the excess forces that is there. So it will try to tilt in order to compensate the forces, in order to relieve it from the sources, so much of forces that is acting on the surfaces. So we can see in the diagram, on the one side there will be elongation of periodontal ligament fiber, and on the some side there will be compression of fiber. Here we can see the fiber will be elongated, here we can see the fiber will be compressed. And later on there will be bone resorption on this side, and hence we can see the arc shaped pattern of bone loss in trauma from occlusion. Trauma from occlusion in the absence of inflammation result in funnel shaped widening of the crestal portion of periodontal ligament. When combined with inflammation, bone destruction is aggravated, causing a more desired bone destruction pattern. Let us see. We have seen trauma from occlusion in the absence of inflammation. Now we will be discussing trauma from occlusion in the presence of inflammation. So we can see the forces are increased. With the red arrow, I have tried to show that the forces are increased. Moreover, the forces are not uniformly distributed, and plaque accumulation is also there. So Because of the trauma from occlusion, there will be vertical defect, but because of the presence of bacteria is there and various inflammatory component is there, this V-shaped pattern, it no longer be an arc-shaped pattern. It might follow any other pattern depending upon the pathway of inflammation the the bone pattern, it may vary. Let us see. It might be any other pattern like this or like this, any other pattern, but it can give any bizarre pattern of bone destruction. It might not be the same as that was there in the absence of inflammation. So there will be bizarre pattern of bone destruction if it is trauma from occlusion is accompanied by inflammation that is induced by dental plaque. Now coming on to the radiographic appearance of trauma from occlusion, we can see in the radiograph there is periodontal ligament widening, and on the opposite side compression of fibers will be there, condensation of bone will be there, increased density of bone caused by new bone formation in response to increased occlusal forces, loss of lamina dura resulting in widening of periodontal ligament space. Important thing is that only radiographic changes are not pathognomic of trauma from occlusion, and trauma from occlusion must be interpreted in combination with clinical finding like tooth mobility, presence of wear facets, pocket depth, and the analysis of occlusal contact. This is very important thing to note that only on the basis of radiograph we cannot say that the patient is having trauma from occlusion. Bone destruction and systemic disease. In the recent year, interest has increased in the possible relationship between periodontal bone loss and osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is a physiological condition of postmenopausal women resulting in the loss of bone mineral content and structural bone changes. Few of the studies they have reported relationship between the osteopenia and periodontal disease, tooth mobility and tooth loss. Several more recent studies have indicated that such association may exist, but the final proof of these studies is still lacking. Periodontal bone loss also occur in generalized skeleton disturbances like hyperparathyroidism, leukemia, Langerhans cell histiocytosis by mechanism that may be totally unrelated to the usual periodontal problem. So how this is regulated? Calcium level in the bone, blood, when it goes down, release of parathyroid hormones stimulate osteoblast, release of interleukin 1 and interleukin 6, same cytokines, stimulate monocyte to migrate to the bone, and monocyte is getting activated, formation of osteoclast, resorption of bone will be there. Factor determining the bone morphology in periodontal disease. Normal variation in the alveolar bone can be seen due to various features. The anatomic features that affect the bone destruction pattern, it includes thickness and the width of crestal angulation of interdental septa, thickness of facial and lingual alveolar plates, presence of fenestration and dehiscence, alignment of teeth, root and true trunk anatomy, root position within the alveolar process, and proximity with another tooth surface. So we'll be discussing in detail what are these various points and how they influence the pattern of bone. So the diagram, this is from the Carenza book. It shows the initially when the bone resorption start. Initial pattern will be horizontal pattern because the thickness of the bone and the radius of action of bone, they are the important factors that determine the pattern of the bone that will be there. Let us see how. This is a picture from the book, and the line bone loss can become vertical only when it reaches thicker bone in the apical area. This is very important line. The bone loss can become vertical only when it reaches the thicker bone that is there in the apical area. So let us see what exactly the author want to say in the book. Upper molar with thin facial bone. Whenever there is a thin bone, either facial or lingual or any other, then only horizontal bone loss will be there. But as the thickness of bone will increase, then this horizontal bone loss pattern will not be there, only vertical pattern will be seen. So I have tried to simplify the concept by making the video how exactly the pattern of bone loss depend upon the radius of action of bone and the thickness of bone. See, initially the bone, when the thin bone is there, deposition of plaque is there. So radius of action of plaque, it will act, the radius if we draw, the bone resorption will be there. Now see, the bone resorption pattern is horizontal pattern. Now we'll be seeing how bone resorption will be in the molars. Thin bone, facial or lingual, deposition of plaque. Radius of action, will draw radius of action that I have already explained you. And resorption of bone. Now what is the pattern of bone loss? It is horizontal pattern. Now we'll see what is vertical, how vertical pattern of bone loss is formed. Thick bone is there, deposition of plaque. Now we'll be drawing the radius of action of plaque, and the bone will be now removed in the same fashion, and hence the vertical pattern of bone loss is now seen. Now we'll see the same in the molar area. If we draw the radius of action of plaque in thicker bone, then this kind of bone loss will be seen, and if more deposition of plaque will be there, and now the pattern will be vertical pattern. We'll see this video again. Two important thing to remember, it is the amount of bone that is there and the radius of action of plaque, which will be determining the outcome or the pattern of bone that will be there. Thin bone, if plaque will act on it, all the bone will be gone, and hence horizontal. Similarly in posterior, so that is why the horizontal bone loss pattern is most common pattern, because when initially bone resorption start, the pattern will be horizontal because all the thin bone is initially gone. In molars, deposition of plaque, radius of action, horizontal pattern. Now coming on to the vertical bone loss pattern. The plaque is there, radius of action of plaque, outcome will be vertical defect. So the author of the book, Carenza, says the bone loss can become vertical only when it reaches the thicker bone in the apical area. Okay, let's continue our lecture. Coming on to the fenestration and diascens. What is fenestration? Fenestration is various holes. The outer area is intact but hole in between. So fenestration is isolated area in which root is denuded of bone and the root surface is covered by gingiva and periosteum. But the diascens, when the denuded area extends through the marginal bone. If you look into the diagram, in this diagram we can see the marginal bone is intact but there is a hole in between. So we can see the root. So this is called fenestration. But if this denuded bone, it will continue, and continuous loss of bone is there, then this is known as diascens. So the diascens and fenestration, it will affect the pattern of the bone. If thin bone is there, then fenestration and diascens, it will be there, and it will affect the bone resorption pattern. Now this is gingival fenestration. I have added this gingival fenestration in the chapter of bone loss, because I want to make it clear in your mind what are difference between gingival fenestration and fenestration that is seen in the bone. See, basically it's a fenestration that we can see in the gingiva. See, in the gingiva we can see a hole in the gingiva. This is gingival fenestration, and this is gingival recession. So when it is in the soft tissues, it is known as gingival fenestration and gingival recession. And if we see the same thing in the bone, this is, if you see the fenestration in the bone after lifting the gingiva, then this is known as fenestration in the bone, and that this is dehiscence. Exostosis are outgrowth of the bone of varied size and shape. Palatal exostosis has been found in 40% of the human skull. They might occur as small nodules or large nodules, sharp ridges, spikes like projection, or any combination of these. Buttressing bone formation. Bone formation sometimes occur in attempt to buttress the bone trabeculae weakened by resorption. If bone resorption is there, and because of the resorption the trabeculae they are weakened, either by inflammation or because of any other way the trabeculae they are weakened, in order to reinforce the strength, the excess of deposition of bone will be there. So in order to buttress the bony trabeculae that is weakened by resorption, bone deposition will be seen. And if the deposition it is seen inside the bone, this is known as central buttressing. If it takes place outside the bone and bulges of bone can be seen, this is known as external buttressing or lipping. I have made a diagrammatic representation so that the thing will be easy for you. This is the socket bone. We can see the trabeculae in the normal, but if they are weakened, then the bone deposition is seen in the trabeculae pattern also. This is known as central buttressing, in order to give strength to the bone that is weakened. And if the deposition it is seen on the inside as well as on the outside, we can see how structure of bone is. If the deposition of bone is now protruding onto the opposite side, outside, then this is external buttressing or lipping. So this is a picture of bone external buttressing. We can see from the gingiva, but if we have reflected the gingiva, we can see the bone. Because of the excessive forces that are there, the deposition of bone is there. Yet another diagram. Food impaction. Interdental bone defect often occur when proximal contact is abnormal or absent. Pressure or irritation from food impaction contribute to inverted bone architecture. Because of the food accumulation that is there in the interdental area, and bone loss will be there. So we can see if interdental area, because of food accumulation or plaque accumulation, we can see these type of defect in the craters can be seen in the interdental areas. Thank you so much. We'll be discussing pattern of bone loss and various pattern of bone loss like horizontal, vertical, and all the pattern of bone loss in the next lecture. Thank you so much.